Welcome to an edition of Boxing Info. I'm your host, The Islander, and this is the results show week ending December 4th. Let's get to it. Let's do some recaps. There are some things I did not go over, and a few of you were nice enough to send me links to footage of stuff that was not shown on American TV. Real quickly, in Bolton, England, Matthew Hatton defended his European welterweight title with a third-round stoppage for Roberto Belge. Or Belge. Pretty straightforward there. Left hook to the body did Belge in. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Nagoya, Japan last Friday. Vacant, and this is a hideous vacancy. Elio Rojas' title was being fought for by Juan Carlos Burgos and Hozumi Hasegawa, who was last seen, at least by us, being stopped in a unification bout at 118 pounds by Fernando Montiel. Speaking of Fernando Montiel, I think Ring Warrior 12 wanted to know, does anybody think that Nonito Donaire has a chance of beating Montiel? I do. I mean, I think that that Donaire, for whatever reason, is not very popular with Filipino fighters because he's rivaling Manny Pacquiao. He's not even held anyways near in the same esteem, but just his ability seems to threaten, I guess, the loyalty of diehard Pacquiao fans. I'm just assuming this, because and most of Donaire's biggest doubters are his own people. But yes, I do think that he has a real good chance of beating Montiel. Montiel was losing the Hasegawa fight. Montiel has looked long in the tooth in his previous fights, from the Martin Castillo fight up to the Hasegawa fight. So I'll get into more of that later. In any event, Hasegawa beat Juan Carlos Burgos by a very contentious, unanimous decision, and the fight was a lot closer than the scores indicated, of 117-110 twice and 116-111, at least in my estimation from what I saw. Also, Tijuana, Mexico, Giovanni Segura, the WBO and WBA junior flyweight champion, tested the waters at 112 pounds and scored pretty much a cut stoppage over Manuel Vargas. And he's basically, I believe, owes Ivan Calderon a rematch, and they were saying that basically that fight's going to be fought, if they do fight a rematch, at 112 pounds. And also we go now to the Super 6, which, again, this is kind of why what is happening now is kind of why I call for single elimination bouts. Or a single elimination tournament. Carl Froch scored a shutout, if not a near shutout, win over Arthur Abraham in Helsinki, Finland. Look, this was very straightforward. Froch used his height, used his reach, and when he needed to, used his feet to basically win just about every second of this fight, and did not allow Arthur Abraham to come out of his shell. I think it was a great win for Froch, and people who were, if you look back, he easily still could be undefeated right now if it wasn't for a round or two against Kessler. But neither here nor there. But the thing about it is that, except for Andre Ward, Froch has shown his mettle in this tournament. Whether it was squeaking by Durrell, I know the fight with Jermaine Taylor wasn't in the tournament, but it was still a prelude to the tournament, and he was one of the original tournament contestants. Jermaine Taylor was. So basically, a knockout win over Jermaine Taylor, a razor close decision win over Andre Durrell, a razor close decision loss to Mikkel Kessler, and now this throttling of Arthur Abraham. Obviously he is the number 2 guy right now, and a very close number 2 guy to to Ward. And I think that, in my estimation, if the two of them should get together, it's going to be, one heck of a fight. I have my doubts of whether or not that's going to materialize, because on the same night, of course, Have any of you ever watched a show called How I Met Your Mother? The Barney Stinson character will always say, he'll say a question, he'll say, from, wait for it, wait for it, wait for it, Northern California, of course. Of course. Andre Ward won a fairly contentious decision over Sakio Bika, and the thing is, this fight was closer than the scores had. 120-108, ridiculous. 118-110 is even ridiculous. I don't think it was 7 rounds to 5, but you know, a tight 8 rounds to 4 for Ward, I'm good with. Bika took him into deep waters like I thought he would, and Ward fought Bika's fight and beat him at his own game. You know, Ward has shown the ability to adjust and adapt to each opponent as they've thrown in front of him. The thing is, I still wonder, how in the world has this guy gotten a fight, even though this isn't part of the tournament, so to speak, it's not part of the tournament. He's going to be the only fighter in the Super 6 that has not had to leave his country to fight this fight. Because from what I understand, the semifinals and the final are going to be held in the United States. So Andre Ward is going to... Mikkel Kessler has come to California to fight Ward. Froch went to Denmark and now Helsinki in two fights. Arthur Abraham has fought in Helsinki and he's fought in Detroit. I'm sorry, we already mentioned Kessler, wrote the European fighters. Durrell has gone over to England. Jermaine Taylor went to Germany. And Wood's the only one that hasn't left home. I mean, what is up with this crap? I thought the whole thing was supposed to be fair and equitable, yet this guy has fought 3, his fights basically in the confines of the United States and more so on the West Coast. I don't understand this. Anyway, neither here nor there. The way the semifinals are shaping up, and you guys know more about this than I do, or following it better than I do. Ward next is supposedly fighting Arthur Abraham, and Froch is fighting Glenn Johnson. I think that it's probably a foregone conclusion that Ward's going to get past Abraham, although Abraham is going to be fighting a guy more his size and height and reach, which might help him out a little bit better than he got helped out against Froch and Durrell in the past 2 fights. The Froch thing against Glenn Johnson is, here's the deal. Glenn Johnson is the truth, and Froch, you know, has looked very good against Pascal, very good against Jermaine Taylor, very good against, you know, I guess okay against Durrell, and real good against Abraham, and even a really good account of himself against Kessler. Johnson's a different animal. He will make you answer questions about yourself and your ability. So that fight's a toss-up to me. I would expect Froch maybe to just have the edge, just in the fact that he's younger and probably, you know, hungry to get past this hurdle and get on to the end of the tournament. But I would have never thought at the beginning of this, when you laid these 6 guys out, that it would be Ward and Froch at the end. I would never have thought that. Okay, then came the ESPN card, and the fight that we did not see. Walter Estrada, with a record of 37 wins, 13 losses, 1 draw before this fight, pulls off the upset over Nate Campbell in an 8-round decision. Nate Campbell has since called it a career and is retiring. You can't get past this guy. You're not, you know, this is the slick African American, I guess, that you know, what's his name, Bernard Hopkins was talking about, that Pacquiao wouldn't fight. Then in a televised fight, Jason Litzau scored a major upset, and I remember, you know, basically predicting that Caballero was going to stop him. And in the 8th, 9th, and 10th rounds, I was thinking to myself, it's possible that Litzau, if he let his hands go, like Harold Letterman was saying, might have stopped Caballero. A lot of you have written this, and I agree 100%. Basically, Caballero is just a smaller version of Paul Williams. You know, volume of punching, height, and reach have overwhelmed other opponents. put a guy in that can actually negate that, and that's one of the things Larry Merchant said, that Caballero looked very uneasy fighting Litzau, because Litzau is taller than any opponent, or most opponents, that Caballero faces. All I'm saying is this: with that not so great defense that Caballero has, he's been knocked out before, and my thinking is this: if Gamboa lands on him or Wanma lands on him, it's all over. It's going to be all over. He doesn't possess one-punch knockout power. He's sloppy. And this fight's not a microcosm of really his career. Let's be clear about that. I mean, he was definitely leaner and tighter and more, I guess, technically sound in his fights against, like Molitor and those guys, Stevie Molitor. But, he had his chance on a major network. Even in his last fight against Dow Jordan, he got hurt in the last round messing around. Those guys would probably kill him. I mean, I read an article Dan Raphael wrote that said he had a interview with a very quick conversation, more or less, not an interview, with Bob Arum, recapping these fights, and basically Bob Arum's only comment about this fight was, Caballero is finally out of my life, because they were basically petitioning hard for a fight against Gamboa or against Juan Manuel Lopez. But I thought Litzau won the fight. I thought it wasn't even, one judge had 97-93 for Litzau, the other one 96-94. I think either one of those scores were probably apt to what I was seeing. The judge that had Caballero winning by 2 points, I don't know what the heck scorecard he was watching. What fight he was watching. Another point of note that, and I'm not sure if HBO brought this up because I was kind of like really not listening to them closely, was that Caballero came in at 131.5 pounds, and it took more than an hour for him to take off that pound and a half. More than an hour. And kudos to the Litzau team. For one, this is one of those occasions where a guy is given, I was saying this about Audley Harrison against David Haye, that they get one look at the basket, or their last chance, the one slam wonders, as I call them in tennis, or if somebody else calls them that, I just repeat it. This is the one look at the basket. You either jump in and take it, or it's going to close forever. Litzau took advantage of this, and I kudos to him, because, as I've said before, he was labeled as an ESPN shit. This term my dad came up with about some of these guys like Bruce Finch that got shots at Sugar Ray Leonard and got blown out in 3 rounds. James Buscemi against Lexus Arroyo. That's where that comes from. I know that Hitman Conan brought that up on my channel. Big shout out to you, Hitman. But the thing is, Litzau has graduated from that now. He's no longer an ESPN shit. He's definitely showed his mettle, because this was a fight that he could easily have gone down in flames, and he stood his ground and did everybody proud. Do I expect him to win a world title? In this day and age of diluted titles, maybe, but I've got my doubts. Okay. Andre Berto taking on Freddie Hernandez. First right hand, Berto through, knocks Hernandez down. He gets up, he goes stumbling towards the ropes, and they call this fight off, I don't know, about 2 minutes into it, a minute and a half, somewhere in there. They think that this is something that basically is a call out to Pacquiao. I find it hard to believe, because, he's been fighting a steady diet of B and C level opponents, with the exception of a couple of guys. Make the fight. Go ahead and make the fight. I mean, Berto against Pacquiao. I think Pacquiao's going to beat both Mosley and Berto, and it's going to be for different reasons. Berto because he's never been in the fire, and Mosley because he's been burned in the fire too many times already. And it's just, go ahead and make those fights. Make them twice. Basically in 3 months of each other, because that's all it's going to take. And it's one step closer to basically unifying the titles, because once a guy starts collecting the belts, and the linear champion won't fight that guy, that's when you start basically questioning the lineage of the guy who's got the linear belt in the division. Not that there is such a thing. I go off of what the media sometimes says and does. Then the main event, Juan Manuel Marquez versus Michael Katsidis. The thing about this is, the headline of this show should be Juan Manuel Marquez makes a fool out of the Islander. Because I really thought, and when the third round came and Katsidis planted Marquez down on his back with a left hook, I thought, oh boy, this is going just like planned. Marquez has hit Katsidis with everything he has. Nothing's happened. His face is still fairly together, and the Katsidis power got to Marquez earlier rather than later like I thought it would. But I'll give Juan Manuel Marquez credit. He stood his ground. He economically, as usual, landed 361 punches in less than 9 rounds. I mean, that's incredible. Here's the alarming thing about this fight for Marquez. While he was landing, where is this here? 52% of his punches, I'm sorry, I said it wrong, 327 of 628 punches on Katsidis in less than 9 rounds. Katsidis connected on nearly 200 punches on Marquez, 194 out of 630. 1 out of every 3 punches that Katsidis threw landed on Marquez. Is that good or bad? That's bad. Why is that bad? Because if Pacquiao lands 1 out of every 3 on Marquez, he doesn't see the end of the fight. And I'm not kidding. Did Marquez stand in the fire to... Maybe he did. Listen, he continues to amaze me for a guy who's 36, 37 years old, even going on 38, is out-dueling these younger guys. Now, understand, Katsidis had the power to definitely hurt him, and he did hurt him. He just didn't have the polish and the skill to stay with Marquez. Juan Diaz, on the other hand, had the volume and the gumption and the I guess some of the polish to stay with Marquez. He didn't have the power to hurt him, although he did stun him a few times. So he's staying with these younger guys. I'm wondering now if Nate Campbell is kicking himself for moving up to 140 and taking the beatings at the hands of Timothy Bradley and Victor Ortiz and now Walter Estrada, and not staying at 135 or trying to get his body to make 135, even though he failed in his last fight there against Funica. Because I would think that if he was at his best, he and Marquez would have been a great fight. That's just me. And one thing about this is if you ever wanted to see, Marquez has got the classic boxer-puncher counterpuncher style. It's not the best I've ever seen from one of Nacho Beristain's fighters, but when I was watching this fight, and I was watching him against Juan Diaz both times, it's not as good as when Ricardo Lopez employed it, but it's damn good. And if you ever want to see this style employed at its best, go back and watch Ricardo Lopez's fights, because that is the quintessential version. Just even the way Marquez holds his hands and sets up. Ricardo Lopez was taller for his weight than Marquez, had a longer reach than Marquez did, and he was a deadly puncher. It was, I was having flashbacks watching Marquez of Ricardo Lopez, although I think Ricardo Lopez was better and just as accurate and more powerful, pound for pound, better puncher than Marquez. But it's definitely a very good image or mold, at least a copy of Ricardo Lopez in my version. In regards to Marquez and his wanting a third fight with Manny Pacquiao in hopes of a first win, my opinion, I stated this on the channel, is I don't think it's a good fight. I will accept it in my mind and in my heart if they fight at 135 for all of Marquez's titles. For one thing, it would be for a linear title, an undisputed title in one of the original 8 weight classes, which would go further for Pacquiao's legacy. I don't think the fight is competitive over 135 pounds. I think Marquez does not carry the weight any better. I don't even think he carries 135 to the fullest extent. I think there's a little bit left out. In regards to the Katsidis fight, I didn't even go over this. Marquez went down. in the third round, got up, stood his ground, and basically pummeled Katsidis for the rest of the fight. I personally thought the fight was stopped a little bit too soon. They should have given Katsidis a chance to gather himself and, you know, at least come back. He deserves that. I think he deserves that. But, you know, he wasn't going to win a decision, and his only chance was a puncher's chance, in which he definitely had, but he was breaking down rapidly. Article I read about these two guys that after Katsidis left the hospital, he and his entourage went through, I don't know if it was that In-N-Out hamburger place or one of these places, and loaded up on a ton of food, and then drove back to the hotel and called Marquez, and they went up to Marquez's suite, and they all basically met. And Katsidis insisted on giving Marquez an autographed pair of the shoes he wore in the fight, and Marquez did the same, and the two fighters talked for a while, and they took pictures together. Both camps took pictures together. Great show of sportsmanship after this fight. And I'm sure we'll see Katsidis again getting back to Marquez with the Pacquiao thing. Bob Arum has been quoted as saying that if they do fight, it's going to be at 147. Another thing that Bob Arum said was, in regards to Pacquiao's future, whether it's with Marquez or not, I'm going to try to call Top Rank to see if I can speak to somebody about this. I'm beginning to wonder if the Golden Boy deal on Pacquiao is up, because Bob Arum was quoted as saying, if Pacquiao and Marquez fight, there will be one promotion, and it'll be Top Rank. Golden Boy can represent Marquez at press conferences and weigh in and this and that, but there's going to be one signage, one sponsor, one promoter in dealing with that fight. And he said the same thing with Lou DiBella and Berto. Bob Arum was quoted as saying that essentially they will be signing their fighter over to him for that one fight. That they will not co-promote Pacquiao with any fighter except Floyd Mayweather Jr. That's the only one that they will allow Golden Boy or any other promoter to co-promote a fight with, to get the fight done. So that's what's next on this. I'm just going to read this. Evander Holyfield says he's going to continue to fight until he regains the world heavyweight title. Devin Alexander and Timothy Bradley will meet, I'm trying to think what the date is, I think January, at the Silverdome, Pontiac, Michigan. They're hoping for a big walk-up crowd. Okay. In case you don't know, Julio Cesar, first it was Alfonso Gomez dropping out of the Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. fight. Now it's Julio Cesar Chavez Jr.'s dropped out. That's going to be it. Let's see what's coming up this week. Do a little bit of preview action, and then we'll save it, because I don't want to get these shows too close together. December 4th, Top Rank pay-per-view, Anaheim, California. Nonito Donaire fighting Vladimir Sidorenko. Ring Warrior 12. Sidorenko is not a no-name fighter. He's the former WBA bantamweight champion. Lost his title on a slightly controversial decision to Anselmo Moreno, who does nothing but fight to decisions himself from Panama. 12-round bantamweight fight. Look, this is a fight Donaire can lose. Sidorenko is pretty decent, and it's definitely the right fight in order to qualify him for fighting Montiel for the titles. He's already qualified for fighting him, but this is going to be him earn his spot in the bantamweight division. I'll go with Donaire. I think his size and his strength is probably going to be a little bit, and his overall ability is going to be a little bit too dynamic for Sidorenko. This is a fight very similar to Devin Alexander against Koltenic, although I think that Donaire is a little bit more polished than Alexander, and Sidorenko may not be as seasoned as Koltenic. Sidorenko is pretty decent. He's going to make Donaire answer some questions. I expect Donaire to get by in this fight, maybe by decision, probably by a decision, but I'm not certain. Also, the WBC lightweight titles on the line between Humberto Soto and Urbano Antillion. I'm going with Antillion in this fight. I've seen Soto in his last several fights, and he's looked long in the tooth. This is the difference between a fighter who is slightly over the hill and one that is coming into his prime and is hungry. And I would not be surprised if Antillion stops Soto. I think that Antillion is the natural lightweight. I think Soto is the blown up featherweight who's just, I mean, maybe unnaturally grown into the lightweight division. I'm going with Antillion in this fight. I wouldn't wager on it because Soto, maybe Soto's been looking for a challenge and he's been just bored in his previous fights, but he's looked mighty old to me, and weather beaten, kind of like Margarito looked weather beaten, but should be a good fight, a high contact fight while it lasts, because Antillion is just going to make Soto fight. Anything else on this card? I guess Roberto Garcia's son, if that's his son, Miguel Angel, Mikey Garcia, is going to be fighting Olivia Lancha. I don't know if that's going to be televised or not, but neither here nor there. HBO Latino, for those of you who have it, from Veracruz, Mexico, Saul Canelo Alvarez, coming off his spectacular knockout over Carlos Baldemir, who also was back in action a couple of weeks ago, taking on Lovamor Endu. I'm expecting a wide decision in that fight. Daniel Ponce de Leon taking on Sergio Medina, 10-round featherweight fight on that card if you're going to watch it on HBO Latino. What else was on? Did I miss? Santinez, California. The top ranked card, HBO Latino. Go Fight Live TV, Shimon Alvarez taking on Ai Bruce in the welterweight division. And that's pretty much it for this week. Next week, of course, is going to be the Vladimir Klitschko and Amir Khan fights in separate fights, and also the Victor Archini and the bantamweight doubleheader. So next week's a big week. We'll be back, folks, with the recap and the previews of those fights. Thanks for being with me.